Galileo Galilei is known as the father of modern science. You may be wondering why he is held to such a high regard, and in this video, I will be going over the astonishing life of Galileo. Galileo was born in Pisa, Italy in the year 1564. He studied medicine at the University of Pisa, and he later dropped out of the university because of his interest in mathematics. One of Galileo's earlier findings that made a name for himself was the law of pendulum. One day, he noticed the chandelier swinging back and forth and noticed that each swing took the same amount of time as the previous swing. So he began to study pendulums, and what he realized was that the period of a pendulum is the same as long as the length is the same. So even if it swung at a lesser angle, the time it took to swing back and forth was the same. This means that the period of a pendulum is not affected by displacement. Another thing Galileo noticed was that the mass at the end of a pendulum did not change the period or displacement. This later led him to the realization that if this is the case for a pendulum, then it has to be the same for the speed of objects falling at different weights. He argued that Aristotle's beliefs of heavier objects falling faster than those that are lighter is flawed because of his observations with pendulums. To prove this, he demonstrated his hypothesis at the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. He dropped two objects of the same size and material at the same time, with the only difference being the mass. All the people watching saw that they both hit the ground at the same time. This proved that all objects free fall with the same acceleration. This story is not only important because he proved his hypothesis right, but because he showed that you cannot just make a hypothesis and not do anything about it. He set a standard in the world of science that a hypothesis is useless without proving it right or wrong. While Galileo was right more often than not, the Catholic Church did not like the fact that he was challenging many of their beliefs. He challenged the Church on the fact that the Earth was the center of the universe. This all started in 1609 when he found out that a telescope had been built by a Dutch spectacle maker. All Galileo did was build one of his own that was way more powerful. With it, he began to look at the sky and observe the planets. When observing Jupiter, he found out that there were 4 moons in its orbit. Later on, he also discovered that, similar to the moon, Venus had different phases. The only thing that logically made sense with this information was that all the planets revolved around the sun. This, of course, went against what the Church believed and taught, which was that the Earth was the center of the universe, with the planets revolving around it. Although his findings did not go against the Bible, it did get him into a lot of trouble with the Catholic Church. In 1633, he was considered an enemy of the Church and was charged with being vehemently suspect of heresy. His punishment was being put on house arrest for life. This meant that he had to stop teaching and pursuing his love of science. For 9 years, he lived in his home near Florence, until he died on January 8, 1642. Even though the Church did not want Galileo to be known because of his perseverance as an astronomer and mathematician, 400 years later, he is regarded as the father of modern science.